All right, so in this lesson, we're going to be talking about calculator skills. And on Desmos, all of these things are much easier than what I'm about to show you, but I want to show you these calculator skills on the TI calculator because the TI is what you can use on your SATs and your ACTs, and Desmos isn't allowed. So we need to know how to use these functions on the TI, even though they are a little more complicated. It's not bad, but a little more complicated than Desmos. And so what we're going to be using today is all in the second calculate screen of your calculator. So if you do second calculate, which is right up here, this screen comes up just like I show in this window, and it does several things for us. We're going to talk about 1 through 5 today. It kind of gives a little overview here, but I think it's easier if we just go ahead and dive in. So we're going to start here by using the value. And so I'm going to go ahead and type this function into y equals. So if you haven't ever used this calculator, y equals is just below our main screen on that calculator. So y equals, and I'm just going to type this in. So x key is right here. It's x t theta n. So x, and then raised to is going to be this little caret raised to key, and it's going to put you up in an exponent area. So we're going to put 3. To come back down, you want to hit the right arrow key so that you're not continuing to type in the exponent, and then minus 2x plus 3. All right, so that's our equation. Zoom 6, I know it's not really part of our lesson today, but Zoom 6 is the standard window. So if anybody has been changing the screen on your calculator, Zoom 6 will take you back to a standard window. So I'm going to hit Zoom 6, Zoom right here, and then just the number 6. And you'll notice it gives you a 10 by 10 window, 10 to the right, 10 units to the left, 10 up, 10 down. That's considered a standard window. All right, so we have our graph. It wants us to sketch this graph, and so the sketch doesn't have to be exact, but try to make it similar. So we can tell that this looks like it crosses around 2 units to the left, so somewhere in here, and 2 up, maybe a little above 2 units going up. And so we want to try to match it as best we can. So I know that it goes up and back down, and then on this side it goes down and back up. So sketch that graph. Now then, it wants us to calculate the value when x is negative 1, 0.2, and 4. Well, normally on a calculator, we usually go to our table, which does give us the values. So for example, at 4, I can see what the answer is going to be right here. But it's difficult, not difficult, but you have to make some changes to that table in order to see things like 0.2. So the calculate the value screen, which is under that menu, is much easier to use for something like this. So if you'll hit second calculate, we're going to talk about number 1 right here, the value. So you can either hit the number 1 or just hit enter here. And you notice it brings up this X and it's blinking. You can type any X value you would like in there, and it's going to give you the Y value. So I'm going to put in negative 1, which was our first X value they want us to use, and hit enter. And it tells me at negative 1, the value is 4. So they want us to write that as an ordered pair. We've got negative 1, 4. All right, you do not, once you're in that screen, have to go back and redo all of those steps again. You just type in 0.2, hit enter, and it gives you my Y value for 0.2. So we've got 0.2, 2.608. All right, and then the same thing for 4. Just type in 4, hit enter, and it gives me the value at 4, which we saw on the table a minute ago, 459. All right, so the value is going to help you if you're looking for a y value and you're given the x values. So it's kind of the same information you would find in the table. All right, next we're going to talk about the roots menu. And so if remember, the roots are the same as the zeros. So whenever, or the x-intercepts, right? You go to the calculate, second calculate screen, you're going to see 0. It doesn't say root, but 0 is the same thing. So we're going to use that. So you can either hit the number 2 or you could arrow down to 0 and hit enter. And a screen is going to come up that says left bound. It doesn't say 0. So you're going to need to find the left bound or the left side of the point you are looking for. And we should know that the 0 is talking about where it crosses the x-axis. So right here. We need to go to the left of -2. And you look at right now, the left bound is over here somewhere around 4. So to get to the left, we're going to hit the left arrow key. Hit that left arrow key. You'll notice that the left bound values are changing. We want to go to the left of -2. So we have moved to the left of -2. You can see it with the cursor. You can see it here. So we're going to hit enter. And it's going to draw you a little line to the left of the value you're looking for. Now we want to move to the right of this point. So to the right of -2, hit the right arrow key. Once we get past that point to the right, you can hit enter again. And you get these two little boundaries. As long as the value that you're looking for is between those boundaries, you've done it correctly. It's going to say, do you want it to guess? Yes, we do. So to do that, you hit enter again. And now it tells us our 0. So here's the 0, or the root, or the x-intercept. So our root is at -1.893. All right, next we're going to talk about the minimum. So when it says minimum, it's talking about the relative minimum, because we know this graph continues downward, and so it goes to -infinity. But the relative minimum is going to be this value. Let me change the color here. This value right in here. So we want to find that value. So go to your second calculate screen again, and you'll see minimum. So we're going to hit 3, or scroll down to 3 and hit enter. Whoops. And we want to go, let me try that again. Second calculate minimum. And you'll see where it says left bound. We want to go to the left of this minimum value. Now, I was to the left. I could have left it alone. But I'm going to get a little bit closer to that value right here that we're looking for. And then hit enter. So I'm a left bound. Move to the right of that value. So past that minimum, somewhere to the right. Hit enter. And your boundary should be on either side of this point you're looking for. Hit enter again, and it will give you your minimum. So the x at the minimum is 0.816. 0.816. So that's your x value. Then it says calculate the minimum values. It's talking about the y value here. The y is your output value. So 1.911. We're going to go to 3 decimal places on all of this. All right. So minimum means relative minimum. And so we're going to do the left and right boundaries for that as well. All right, now we've got the maximum. So I'm going to change to another color. We'll do blue this time. Yeah, blue's fine. All right, so relative maximum, we're talking about up here at the top. So we're going to second calculate number 4, the maximum. And remember, we're going left and right of this highest point, so I need to move my cursor to the left of that point, hit enter. It will give me a left boundary. Then we're going to move to the right of that point, so past that high point, hit enter. It'll give me the right boundary, and then for it to guess, I've got to hit enter one more time. And so there is my maximum value. So this maximum up here is at where x is negative 0.816, and the y value is 4.089. All right, so all of those things can be done in that second calculate screen. All right, let's keep going here. This one I feel like you're going to be somewhat familiar with. They want us to put a second equation into y equals. So I'm going to go back to y equals, into y2. We're going to type this equation in. It says remember to use parentheses for fractions. They've already written them for you, but if it's not written, you still need to do it. Fractions need to always go in parentheses. So 7 divided by 8, close parentheses, x plus 2. Now it didn't ask us to do this, but I am going to go ahead and hit the graph so we can see what we're looking at. This is our original. This is our new. We notice we have colors on this calculator. That's nice. On the handheld ones, we don't have the color version, but you'll still be able to see these intersection points. So I feel like you're familiar with this from Algebra 1, but you second calculate, and then there's intersection down here at number 5. Second calculate the intersection, and then it's going to ask, do you want to use this equation, the blue equation or the blue curve, as your first curve? And so we're going to hit enter for yes. And then the red equation or the red line comes up. Do we want to use it for our second curve? We do, so we're going to hit enter for yes. And then for it to give you the answer, you need to hit enter for it to guess. So hit enter again. And we have an intersection right there in the middle. We know we have 3 of them, but the middle one is right here. So it wanted to calculate these points. So our first one is at 0.365, 2.319. All right. So to get these other 2 points of intersection, we're going to do the same process again. Second, calculate the intersection, number 5. And it's going to ask again, do you want to use this for the first curve? We do, but you may want to move your cursor to another intersection point at this time, because if you don't, then it's going to keep giving you the same intersection over and over again. So now we're close. We're going to hit enter. We want to use the red line, so yes, we do. Hit enter. And to guess, we got to hit enter one more time. So there it is. Our second intersection point is negative 1.848. .383. All right. And then our last point of intersection. So one more time, second, calculate the intersection, number 5. This time I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and let's just say we kind of forgot to slide our cursor. You can do that on the second curve as well. This time it's just going to move along the line. But I need to move my cursor close to that last intersection point, which for me is that top one, before I hit enter and then guess. So the last intersection point is 1.484. 3.298. All right. So those are the keys within the calculate screen. Now this next part is really just about using the calculator to adjust your window. It's not about the calculate screen. So it wants us to go back to y equals, clear out what we have, so just hit clear, arrow down, hit clear, and they have a new equation for us to put in. So we have negative 3x squared plus 2x plus 16. All right. So let's take a look at the Zoom 6 window, or the graph of this function. Now we should know that this is the graph of a parabola, so we're not looking for this graph to go back up or down anywhere, but we don't really have a good picture of this graph. So what they want us to do is adjust the window so that we can see the parabola a little bit better. So I know that I need to see the top of this parabola. We can tell that it goes up higher than what we've got here. Higher would be a better y value, a larger y value. So we're going to go to our window, and you'll notice all of these different things that we can change. We want to change the maximum y value. So I'm going to move down there to the maximum y value. Right now it's at 10. I'm going to try 20. We don't know exactly what to try, but I know it needs to be higher. Let's go back to our graph and look and see what we get. Okay, so 20 worked, but you'll notice there's a lot of little marks here. If you wanted to change the number of marks that are in your graph, then when you go to your window, where it says the Y scale right here, you could change that. So I'm just going to change it to 2 so maybe you can see what I'm talking about. If I change the scale to 2 and then hit the graph, then we can see that there's not nearly as many little marks on our y-axis here, but we need to know that each of these marks now represents 2. This is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, etc. So we're going to sketch this graph. So I know to the left, these are still in normal units of 1. So 1, 2, looks about where it crosses, and then 1, 2, 3, so a little less than 3 on this side is where it crosses. And then going up, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, so around 16. So these are in units of 2. So you need to somehow note that you're using units of 2. So that's at 16. And then we're going to sketch a graph. Now, it wants us to record the window we use. Well, we didn't change the x's. So if you go back to your window, your x's, the minimum was -10, the maximum was +10. That's all it wants. The y's we did change. We went from -10 to 20. All right, so when you see this, it's wanting you to fill in your minimums and your maximums. All right, so here's an example of one that they just want us to play with the window so that we can best match this graph. And of course, they left off the x and y axis scale marks so that we can use that to help us out. So we're going to go to y equals and clear out the equation that we just did. Type in the new equation. So we have 5x raised to the 4th power plus 3x raised to the 3rd power. Oh, I did what I told you guys not to do. So let's go back here and delete all that. All right, we're going to raise to the 4th power, but then we got to arrow to the right, bring it back down, and then we have plus 3x raised to the 3rd power Go to the right to bring it back down, minus 2x squared, and minus 9. All right. So if I use the window that I was just using, if I didn't do Zoom 6, if I just go from here and hit graph, this is what I get. Well, although the graph is the same, of course the window is not the same. So we can tell here that they have less y at the top and more of the y-axis at the bottom. Now, if you'll look, it doesn't appear that there's a lot more y at the bottom than what they have here, except that there's a lot below. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is try to adjust my y-axis a little bit. So I'm going to go to my window, and for my minimum, the bottom portion of my y, I think I'll change that to -20. And the maximum, of course, they didn't show near as much, so I think I'll put just 5 or something. I'm going to change my scale back to 1 right now. And let's see what that looks like. Oh, there it is. All right, just took it a minute. So it looks like, for the most part, here the graph was in the middle of the screen. Here now the graph is in the middle of the screen. So I feel like we're pretty good here on the y values. Maybe a little less down here if you wanted. It is an estimate. But it looks like our graph is much more narrow than this graph. So that means that they're not showing as many x values on the left and right. We need to change our x's so that there are fewer showing. So instead of going from -10 to 10, I think I'll go from -5 to 5. All right, so now let's take a look. All right, so now this screen is looking very much like this screen, and that's the whole point of this exercise, is just to know how to adjust that window. So now that we have a pretty good match, I think those are the values I want to use to record. So go back to your window. The x's we set from -5 to 5. The y's we went from -20 to 5. Now again, that's not an exact science. You may have gone from -15 to 5. It still looks pretty good. So that's just an exercise in adjusting your window. Now remember, now that we've adjusted that window, when we graph anything else in y equals, it's going to use this window. So to go back, remember the Zoom 6 takes you back to a standard window.